On December 7th, 1941, the world changed. Perl-Harbor bomb.
My gosh, the Japanese are coming. Immediately, I was frightened beyond control.
The people that were killed and wounded, I wasn't prepared for that. That was a real shock.
I get tears even when I think about it, because there were a lot of them that didn't make it.
Декабрь 1941 года. В разгаре Вторая мировая война. Япония стремится к продолжению территориальной экспансии в Азии. Ей жизненно необходимы ресурсы и рынки сбыта. Соединенные Штаты, традиционно поставлявшие Японии сырье, оборвали с ней торговые отношения, дав понять, что Вашингтон не намерен мириться с японской агрессией в Китае. Японское командование решило сыграть на опережение, нанеся внезапный удар по главной базе ВМС США на Тихом океане. Япония надеялась, что ей удастся вывести из строя американский флот, выиграть время и заключить новое с позиции силы соглашение США. 26 ноября ударная эскадра, в составе которой находились 6 авианосцев с 4 сотнями самолетов на борту, соблюдая режим радиомолчания, взяла курс на Гавайи. База ВМС США располагалась в бухте Перл-Харбор на южной стороне гавайского острова Оаху. План японцев оправдался, приближение огромной эскадры осталось незамеченным, а первые признаки скорой атаки были обнаружены лишь за несколько часов до надвигающейся катастрофы.
We reported the submarine that was trying to get in. It was a Japanese submarine. The report we got, it was a one PBY bomber, and that was taking off or took off, and they spotted the submarine trying to get in, and reported to the ward, and the ward went after it, and that's when they sunk it. With depth charges.
Подлодка была потоплена 7 декабря в 6:45 утра. Сообщение о контакте с противником командование американского флота получило лишь в 7:30, за 20 минут до начала атаки.
It was a beautiful Hawaiian morning, about 8 o'clock, and suddenly we heard a buzzing across the valley. That means across the mountains. And it kept getting larger, bigger and bigger, and we thought, well, what? They must be doing some kind of an exercise. We thought it was our own planes. But lo and behold, when the planes got overhead, we looked at the wings, and there was the rising sun. And then we knew we were in trouble.
Somebody said, we're being attacked. He said, who is it? One guy said the British and then the Dutch. Now it's Germans. Nobody even had a clue as the Japanese. Who would think that the Japanese would have the audacity to attack the United States?
В 7:53 японский летчик Фучита Мицуо передал по радио 3 слова «Тора, Тора, Тора», «Тигр, Тигр, Тигр». Это было условное обозначение. Теперь японское командование знало, что им удалось достичь внезапности. Первой целью японской авиации стали аэродромы острова Оаху, Уэллерфилд, Хикэм, Эва и Каниохи. Пикирующие бомбардировщики Аичи, сопровождаемые истребителями Зера, уничтожили большинство самолетов, которые так и не успели подняться в воздух. В 7:55 японские эскадрильи достигли своей главной цели – гавани Перл-Харбор.
She came over into our bedroom and called me and told me that everything was on fire, that we were being attacked, and I said nobody will attack us. I said, you're seeing things. I went out and saw the harbor on fire, and all black smoke from the oil from the ships burning.
Sailors were going to catch a boat to go to church. Of course, the noise from the bombs exploding changed their mind. Now, the fleet was not ready for an attack. The ammunition was in the lockers locked up. So they didn't have access to the ammunition to fire at the Japanese aircraft. That was a serious mistake.
Nobody knew what to do or where to go because so many men were missing. Some of them were home, some of them were on the way to the ship.
The air was filled with all kinds of smoke and debris. The noise was unbearable. Guns were going off, seemed like all around us. And planes were coming in from all directions and primarily concentrating on the battleships.
После взрыва первых бомб Логан Рэмси, один из офицеров на базе, кинулся к радиорубке, чтобы передать в эфир знаменитое сообщение. Воздушный налет, Перл-Харбор. Это не учение. На базе царил настоящий хаос. У моряков и солдат зачастую не было боеприпасов. Самолеты стали вплотную друг к другу, так что пламя на одном из них быстро перекинулось на соседние. Но, несмотря на царившую неразбериху, американские военные делали все возможное, чтобы дать отпор врагу.
The glass from the windows is shrapnel. I mean, it's just as deadly as a bomb would be. So we started knocking out windows. And about that time, this Marine came up to me and said, "Hey, Cook," he said, "you're a machine gunner, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." So we get up on top of the building, and actually, the planes were flying below the level that we were at. And we shot about 3 or 4 of them down.
And I saw these bodies lying around, and I wondered if it was somebody I knew. So the first one, he was lying on his back, and I turned him over, and the back of his head was missing. So I knew who he was.
They were after the carriers, but they weren't in. But so they got after the battleships and cruisers and destroyers and repair ships and the shops and everything.
Двух американских авианосцев в бухте действительно не было. Незадолго до атаки они покинули Перл-Харбор, где, тем не менее, оставалась главная ударная сила флота – линкоры. Первым под удар попал старый учебный броненосец «Юта» и стоявший рядом с ним корабли.
I could see a ship on fire, and the Utah, which was hit by 2 torpedoes, had capsized and had men swimming alongside the ship. To this day, there's still some sailors that were left under the ship because they were not able to get them out. The worst feeling I ever had in my life is to see them.
Но главной целью японских самолетов была вовсе не Юта. С другой стороны острова Форд была пришвартована основная мощь флота – линкоры Калифорния, Мэриленд, Оклахома, Теннесси, Вест-Вирджиния, Аризона, Невада и Пенсильвания. Все они, за исключением последнего, выстроились в один ряд вдоль берега, представляя легкую мишень для японских бомбардировщиков и торпедоносцев.
Stu, let's see what's going on. So we took the sight cap off the periscope. Bam! There went the Arizona. And I estimated about 32 bodies went flying through the air. Now that's quite an experience for a 20-year-old brat that grows up overnight.
Every battleship carries about 1 million gallons of crude oil. So the Arizona, the West Virginia, others spilled all their fuel oil. So the fire from the Arizona was so intense that even a couple hundred feet from the ship, the oil was on fire. So these guys that fell over, came up, got the film on their bodies, were like human torches.
Ivan Harris, who was the coxswain, told me that when his bow hook reached down to pull one of the fellows in, the skin came right off his arm, and he went under the water and drowned. He was gone. We watched the Oklahoma turn upside down. 12 minutes is what it took. And I figured that's what was going to happen to us. I said, well, what do you want us to do? Get over on the beach. I says, how? fire was about 3 times as high as my house from the oil that was burning. He says, "Swim, you idiot." We jumped, we went as deep as we could. We swam underwater, and I broke surface twice before I hit the beach. And the hottest breath of air I ever breathed in my life. The Tennessee, the California, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, they were all in competition for bluegrass and romance and all that. And they won. And their reward was they could sleep in Sunday morning. And so consequently, all 89 members of that band went out into eternity.
Most of the damage was done in the first 11 minutes by the torpedo planes and the dive bombers. I showed up about 20 minutes later. Now, at that time, the West Virginia, my ship, was on fire and sinking. The Arizona looked like a volcano right behind us. The Oklahoma right ahead of us had capsized upside down.
Через 10 минут после попадания первых бомб Аризона пошла ко дну. Вместе с кораблем погибли более 1100 моряков. Это около половины числа всех американцев, погибших в Перл-Харборе. Другие корабли также подверглись массированной атаке. Помимо горящей Вест-Вирджинии, огнем была охвачена Калифорния, которая затонула вслед за Аризоной.
Battleship roll in a situation like that cannot move. With your lines, you're tied together. You have to be away from each other.
Heard some. There's some. Once or twice we heard an explosion, and of course we was lucky that we had our second bomb hit the Tennessee, went into the powder room of the number 3 turret on that 14-inch gun, and we were lucky because it didn't go off. It's a dud. If it had blew up, we'd have been just like the Arizona.
Теннесси повезло. Не разорвавшиеся бомбы позволили выиграть линкору немного времени, в течение которого корабль попытался покинуть гавань, спасаясь от огня с горящей Аризоны. Корабль успел спасти часть экипажа погибающей Аризоны. Чтобы избежать его участи, капитан Теннесси принял решение посадить корабль на мель. Так же, как и Теннесси, небольшие повреждения получил стоявший позади него Мэриленд. Однако его соседу, Оклахоме, повезло куда меньше.
The Oklahoma was hit with 9 torpedoes and 500-pound bomb, and it rolled over. And the Oklahoma was inboard of the California. The people were on top trying to get the bodies out. There was 33 people trapped in it.
7 that I know of that died from asphyxiation by a friend of mine who was a chief metalsmith. He took a crew and went over on the Oklahoma with an acetylene torch. And the heat from that torch united with the fumes of oil and gas below and asphyxiated 5 of the men that died.
2 days later, I walked up and there's cutting holes in the bottom of the ship. And they'd heard somebody knocking. And I seen 2 men come out, 2 boys. And they just run, grabbed around the first person they saw.
Однако до конца было еще далеко. Около 9 утра на горизонте появились 170 самолетов противника. Началась вторая волна атаки, в которой японцы, впрочем, встретили куда большее сопротивление.
Everybody wanted to get even, wanted to give them some bombs in return. I'd say that retaliation by our members of the military was top-notch on their minds. How to get even, how to blow them up, how to fight them. That was the number one question, number one thing that people did for that moment. And I'll say it, I felt the same way.
Did I want revenge? I guess in my heart I would say yes. And yet I did not have a hatred towards them. But I did think that we needed to respond in a way that Japan would know that we're not kowtowing to them, or no way is Hirohito going to march down Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C.
В ходе второй волны японские самолеты нанесли еще одну серию ударов по аэродромам и попытались уничтожить доки. В воздух успели подняться отдельные американские истребители, вступившие в бой с противником. Крейсер «Сент-Луис» смог вырваться из бухты в открытое море, где атаковал японскую субмарину.
What we were doing was pulling bodies out of the bay, oil-soaked dead men. One of the first ones I grabbed hold of, I reached over to pull this sailor out. I had his hair and half his shoulder, and the rest of his body was gone.
Some 2,000 boxes lined up, and nobody had a dog tag, so we had to look at the shirt they had on or whatever and see who it was. I did that only once, and I couldn't do it again.
After the attack and the fire was out, there was nothing to do on the ship. So I went over to the hospital and saw these probably 100 men or more in suspension. They'd been badly burned, hair burned off, and they were blind. And I knew some of them wouldn't live through the night. So I took a notebook and said, if you will give me your parents' address and dictate a note, I'll see that they get it. That was kind of surprising, because no matter how bad a shape they were in, the message of parents is, don't worry, I'll be all right. And there was optimism about them, even though most of them died that night.
Соединенные Штаты понесли огромные потери. Во время атаки погибли 2403 американца. Еще 1178 получили ранения, травмы и контузии. Были уничтожены 188 американских самолетов. Все 8 линкоров были повреждены. При этом 2 из них, Аризона и Оклахома, были потеряны безвозвратно. Впоследствии Оклахома, на борту которой погибли почти 400 человек, была поднята с морского дна, однако восстановлению уже не подлежала. Останки Юты, одной из первых встретивших неприятеля, до сих пор лежат на отмеле острова Форт. Над затонувшим корпусом Аризоны впоследствии был возведен мемориал. На следующий день после нападения с трибуны Конгресса прозвучала знаменитая речь президента Франклина Рузвельта.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
День позора, как его назвал Рузвельт, стал отправной точкой к участию США во Второй мировой войне. Американское общество сплотилось перед новой угрозой и в максимально короткие сроки смогло оправиться от атаки на Перл-Харбор. Уже через полгода 4 из 6 японских авианосцев, принимавших участие в нападении на Гавайи, были уничтожены в битве у атолла Мидуэй. С того момента американские силы начали освобождение Тихоокеанских островов от японских войск. И еще через 3 года Япония подписала акт о безоговорочной капитуляции на борту линкора «Миссури», который сегодня стоит там же, где и начался долгий путь к победе – в гавани Перл-Харбора.
My last words on Pearl-Harbor is that I hope that we all are smart enough and have the influence of teaching people what is good and what is right. We have enough problems being peaceful today.
My last word on Pearl Harbor is study the history of Pearl Harbor. Do not forget it. sooner or later it'll keep you out of trouble.
The Japanese took advantage on our weaknesses. But I want America to be so strong that nobody will even be tempted to attack us.
Remember Perl-Harbour. Don't let anything like that happen again.